Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the City of Tempe Board of Adjustment meeting for October 30th, 2024. The time is now 6 p.m. The City of Tempe Board of Adjustment is authorized by the Arizona Revised Statutes and the City of Tempe zoning ordinance. Its function is to grant relief where a literal enforcement of the zoning ordinance would result in an unnecessary property hardship, to interpret provisions of the zoning ordinance variances, and to hear appeals from any person or city official aggrieved by the decision of a person responsible for enforcement of the zoning ordinance, the zoning administrator or hearing officer. The board has the City of Tempe Community Development Staff summary reports on the item being considered at this meeting, and we'll use that report in our deliberations. We're going to start with a roll call. We'll start from my right.
Brett Siegel.
Kaylee Palmer.
Kevin Morrow.
Ron Kagi.
Sean McCarley.
And then we have two members present virtually.
Michael McCaffrey.
Mary Foy.
Perfect. We have 7 members. We have a quorum. Some staff introductions. We have quite a few people here tonight from city staff. We have Jeff Tenulevich with Community Development, Ryan Levake, Deputy Director, Community Development, Drew Yokum from Community Enhancement, Diane Kaminsky, the Principal Planner, Chris Jasper, Senior Planner, Joanne Berry, Administrative Assistant, Mike Baxley from Development Safety, Clarence Matheson from the City Attorney's Office, and Jack Schofield from Code Compliance. As well, virtually we have, I can't read my own handwriting. Somebody else virtually. Oh no, we have somebody else from City Attorney, Matt. We have Matt from the City Attorney's Office. I can't remember. I can't read my own handwriting. This is going to go great. During the hearing, applicants and interested citizens, when your request is called, or if you wish to address the board, please make sure you filled out a citizen's request form. Step up to the microphone, state your name, city of resident. For members of the public, you'll be given 3 minutes to speak, and I have one already. With that, we will turn to item number 1, consideration of the meeting minutes from September 25th, 2024. We had a very long meeting in September, quite a few different items. Do we have any discussion on the meeting minutes? Seeing none, do we have a vote?
I move to approve.
We have a motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving the meeting minutes signify by raising your hands by saying aye. And then online, do we have 2 yays? Yes. We have 2 yays. 7 in favor, 0 against. The minutes are approved. Next item, request for a variance to reduce the use separation requirement between a tobacco retailer and a public school from 1,320 feet to 250 feet by XL Society Incorporated, located at 35 East Broadway Road. The applicant is the Rose Law Group. The project planner is Chris Jasper. Do I have someone from the applicant? This is where you get to make your spiel.
Here's a remote you can use to advance your slide.
Okay. Is the slide show? Yeah, but it just went to permitted tobacco retailer, not the court ruling.
Oh, that's okay. That is the.
All right. My name is Alex Earhart, the owner of XTL Society. We were cited in February after we became, we opened in the city of Tempe as a private, nonprofit, private members club, which is no use permit is required in the city of Tempe. The city has acknowledged that. There's a court ruling after we were cited for becoming a tobacco retailer saying we are not a tobacco retailer. We don't sell tobacco and don't allow tobacco on the premise. We are here today because the city of Tempe doesn't think the court ruling means anything and tells us we need to become a tobacco retailer to continue to operate. I will read you the ruling. The defendant is a nonprofit private members club. The defendant operates to provide its members the opportunity to engage in social interactions and entertainment, including games and snacks. The defendant is open only to members and their guests, and only by invitation or referral from other members. The defendant is not a retailer. The defendant has no related, does not sell tobacco or use tobacco on the premise. The defendant is a private club under where consumption of cannabis may occur, but is not required. Seventh, the private member club is not required to obtain a use permit under ZDC. We are not required to be any distance from the school. But we're here because the city doesn't care about the judge's order, and they told us we still needed to be here. I chose not to pay an attorney to be here because we've spent tens of thousands of dollars on attorneys already and been, quite honestly, misled and put through the ringer by the city. You can go back to the... Yeah, since February, middle of February, we got a letter saying we were operating a tobacco retailer too close to a high school. We needed a license to become a tobacco retailer. We do not sell tobacco. We do not let people smoke tobacco inside of the club. We are a private members club and we are a nonprofit. The city has no laws against cannabis use. They sent us a letter in February saying people cannot consume cannabis within our club. There is no rules or setbacks for cannabis to be consumed any distance from a high school. The city, I've talked to the mayor personally, I've emailed him, asked him, to maybe consider making some rules if he doesn't want a club like this to be near the school. I understand, I have kids, myself. We looked at over 100 properties. This was one of the few that would actually let us operate and do what we wanted to do. After he talked to our legal team and saw that there is no rules against what we're doing. And we've been, bullied by the city since we've been opened. Cannabis is not at all related to tobacco. Cannabis is around for 3,000 years. Cannabis has been around. It has been legal in Arizona since 2010. In 2020, it was legal recreationally. The city should make laws for cannabis consumption lounges where they can be. Unfortunately, they don't have any right now. And they're instead of doing the right thing and making new laws, I feel like they're taking advantage of me, my family, coworkers, and friends, and our 5,000 people that have been through our club. We are not a health hazard or an emergency like I think it was said at the last meeting. We've had one emergency call since we opened. Someone had a bloody nose and passed out. We called 911. They passed out from the sight of their own blood. It was not an issue. We're next to a bar. We're next to a CVS where there's fights weekly. There's obviously opioids and addictive drugs going through pharmacies left and right. Thousands of people are dying, every year from opioids. The CDC says no one has died from cannabis overdose in the last year. We're trying to be nice and cooperate with the city's request for us to be here for a variance, so we'll continue with the reason we think we need a variance. The request is to allow us to operate within 250 feet of a public school. A tobacco retailer means any person or business who primarily sells or offers the sale of tobacco, tobacco products, or tobacco paraphernalia, who's distributed samples or tobacco products or paraphernalia. This includes businesses but are not limited to tobacco shops, cigars, pipe retailers, cigarettes, electronic cigarette retailers, and smoking establishments. The judge already ruled we are not a smoking establishment. We're a cannabis club. And, we really don't think we need to be the first tobacco-less tobacco retailer in the city of Tempe, but that's the route the city has asked us to go, so. A private members club. A club means an institution used for athletic, social, or recreational purposes and operated by a private nonprofit organization. Memberships are basically invited by a written invitation and election according to qualifications in clubs, charter, or bylaws, and use of which is generally restricted to members and their guests. We feel like we're being shoehorned into an ill-fitting definition. The specific circumstances are applicable to the property, including its size, shape, topography, location, and surroundings. Tobacco retailers face significant restrictions due to separation requirements limiting available commercial areas for by right use. The city development pattern, Tempe and Phoenix metro areas are super grid along major arteries, often near schools. Limited site operations due to these patterns. Businesses like Excel Society have few options for where to be. The site is part of a larger irregular shaped parcel. The proposed retailer occupancy is 2,984 square feet in the retail center. To the right is a Mills Modern Social, a bar. To our left is a CVS pharmacy. Right behind Mills Modern Social is the American Legion, which is a private members club that allows tobacco smoking and does not have a tobacco smoking or retail use permit for tobacco. So I think it's almost comical. Within 50 feet of us is someone that allows tobacco smoking indoors, and they don't have to get the permit the city is telling us we need to get, which is kind of ironic. The strict application of this code will deprive such property of privileges enjoyed by other property of the same classifications in the same zoning district. Yeah, the American Legion, they sell alcohol as well as tobacco. They don't sell tobacco, but they allow it to be smoked indoors, which is what the city is trying to say would classify us as a tobacco retailer, even though we're a tobacco-free facility. Walgreens and Mills Modern Social, they sell mind-altering products near schools and operate without the need for any variance. Excel Society, we have a security plan, we have bouncers, we have a security system set up. You can't get into the club unless we verify you're 21 plus. You also have to be a member, verify your membership. We've tried everything in our power to do things the right way, follow the rules, follow the laws, and the communication with the city has been kind of, for lack of a better word, all over the place. Before we opened, we talked to the city numerous times, and every time we were getting different answers, but one consistent answer was a private members club, does not require a use permit, and had no setbacks. Tobacco retailers must be 1,320 feet away from schools, limiting the right use areas. Tempe super grid layout. Without a variance, this property remains underutilized compared to others that don't face such restrictions. The adjustment authorized shall not constitute a grant of special privileges inconsistent with the limitations upon other properties in the vicinity and zone in which this property is located. If we got the variance, we would have no problem being the first tobacco list tobacco retailer in the city of Tempe. We wholeheartedly don't believe that we are a tobacco retailer, but if that's the route the city wants us to go, we will, do our best to follow the rules and make them happy. Granting the variance will align this property with operational standards of similar retail properties in the area, not providing special treatment. Here's a picture of the check-in area. They're double magnetic doors. You can't get in there without us verifying your ID. You have to be 21 plus, you have to be a member. You can see we have the contracts, we have the point of sale system to check and make sure that everything is verified before you get in. Nearby retailers operate without similar constraints. The variance enables fair competition and contributes to neighborhood commercial activity. A variance may not be granted if the special circumstances applicable to this property are self-imposed by the property owner. Like I said, we knew going into this that there was no setbacks for a private members club. That's what we are. That's what we will continue to be. There isn't any variance that would be needed if we were to continue to operate the way we want to operate. But the city is asking us to do this, so that's, I would say, a special circumstance to let us get this variance. It's not self-imposed. This is, a judge actually ruled we didn't need this, but we're doing it for the city. There's There's a legal precedent, Pond First LLC versus the City of Phoenix. The court ruled that special circumstances are not self-imposed when caused by external conditions. New legal framework, the need for a variance arises from new legal issues such as those introducing by the Smart and Safe Act and city zoning requirements. The restrictive separation requirements were imposed by the city's ordinance and development patterns, not by the property owner. And the owner leased the property under pre-existing conditions, seeking equal use to other similar properties, aligning with the court precedent. That's all I have. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. We'll hear from city staff now.
All right. Good evening, Chair, members of the board. My name is Chris Jasper. I'm a senior planner with the City of Tempe. I'm the project manager on this case, representing the city. Can do. So I'll be presenting on the city's position regarding this case. So it is a request for a variance to reduce the use separation requirements for a tobacco retailer, between a tobacco retailer and a public school from a quarter mile, 1,320 feet, to 250 feet for Exhale Society, which is located at 35 East Broadway Road. This site is located in what was originally known as Broadway Plaza. It's a multi-tenant commercial center located at the southeast corner of Broadway and Mill Avenue. It is right across the intersection to the northwest from Tempe High School, and that is what is causing the need for this particular variance request. The site contains other commercial retail uses, including mills, modern social, and other various service uses. So getting into the definition of what constitutes a tobacco retailer. So the applicant read the definition that is directly from our Zoning and Development Code, Section 7-121, which establishes that a tobacco retailer, yada, 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 includes smoking establishments. And smoking establishments are also specifically defined in our Zoning and Development Code in the preceding section, Section 7-120. So that is any business or location that is dedicated in whole or in part to the use of tobacco or other substances emitting smoke, which includes but is not limited to establishments also referred to as cigar bars, lounges, hookah bars or lounges, and tobacco clubs or bars. So based on the information that was available to staff regarding the use classification for this site, it did fall under the purview, under the definition of a smoking establishment, which meant that it also fell under the definition of a tobacco retailer. Ergo, the use separation requirements from a tobacco retailer and a public school apply. I actually want to spend another second kind of on this. So it's important to note that, what we refer to as a tobacco retailer is not in and of itself a meaningful distinction. It is what we define a tobacco retailer to be. So in this instance, we define a tobacco retailer to include smoking establishments, and then we specifically define smoking establishments. So although the use, within the site may not include tobacco specifically, it is that smoking emission activity that constitutes or leads staff to conclude that this is, in fact, a tobacco retailer.
Chris, I want to follow up on that. I'm assuming these tobacco retailer and smoking establishment provisions were added more than 10 years ago, so more than during a period when marijuana was not legal. So there probably was no other types of smoking going on lawfully.
So
that's an assumption, but I don't think it's a very big one to make.
Yes, Chair. The use separation requirements for tobacco retailers and in general, use separation requirements were established in 2007. So the ordinance, language as it is in our text today was adopted in 2007.
And nowhere in the zoning code, let me start with, is there a provision in the zoning code for marijuana dispensaries?
I believe in our code we have language related to marijuana establishments, which have a specific definition, and dispensaries and establishments.
Okay. and that doesn't include cannabis smoking establishments within its definition.
So that marijuana establishment is for retail activities only. So private clubs are, kind of a separate entity.
Okay. I'm just making sure that there's no other parts of the zoning code we should be looking at, but thank you.
Chair Morrow, if I may.
Yeah.
And I don't want to get you off your presentation, but why didn't the city bring any violations? I'm looking at section 3-426 of this Tempe City Code, and it seems to include restrictions on development within 1,500 feet of a charter school or private school. Why wasn't the denial based under the marijuana code versus tobacco use?
Chair, Board Member Siegel, could you repeat the question? I'm not sure I'm following.
Sure. There's a section that seems to prohibit marijuana facilities and establishments, section 3-426. And I'm curious why that wasn't brought into play on this case.
Okay, I think I understand the question. So, Board Member Siegel, so it's a little complicated. So we have similar uses elsewhere in the city where essentially private clubs, as the applicant noted, are permitted, assuming that they are nonprofit entities, that they have established bylaws identifying their membership, their operations, et cetera. And so membership, such clubs are permitted and smoking is permitted in those clubs, but they fall under that smoking establishment category. So this is kind of the workaround that other sites have utilized to, allow cannabis smoking activities in, suites, if that makes sense. So Deputy Director Levesque can provide a more succinct response, I think.
So just to clarify, the definitions in the land use regulations for marijuana establishments or medical marijuana dispensaries, which is the medical aspect of marijuana, those provisions are set up specifically for retailing. It's specific only for those dispensaries that are allowed to dispense and sell the product. It's specifically just for that process. There is another category of cultivating, which is a marijuana establishment cultivation facility, which grows the plant. So those are the specific categories under the Marijuana Act, which are regulated by the city, but does not include the act of smoking in any of those specific environments.
All right, so I hope that answers all the questions at this point. So moving forward with the presentation, so the applicant has provided the site plan. Again, this is a roughly 3,000 square foot suite, an existing multi-tenant commercial center. The floor plan shows the overall layout of the site, just for reference. So getting into the specific criteria, and I believe as Diana mentioned during our study session, this is a 4-part test against which any variance request must be evaluated, and all 4 parts have to be deemed, met for a variance to be approved. So the applicant states that there are unique conditions related to its site, related to its overall configuration, and its proximity to 2 arterial roads, and how that, it results in a special circumstance necessitating this variance request. So arterial roads are, commercial centers are pretty much exclusively, not exclusively, but very frequently located along 2 arterial roads. So that is not a particularly unique condition. The lot has been subdivided. There is an out parcel, but that has not resulted in an overly irregular shaped parcel. The subject site, as measured from property line to property line, is 250 feet from the nearby Tempe High School. But even if you were to evaluate it from door to door, from building face to building face, that separation, as the crow flies, is still only about 500 feet. So it's not it's extremely close. So even if we evaluate it based on metrics that are not specifically defined in our code, it's still within that quarter-mile boundary. Based on this information, based on the existing configuration of the site, surrounding uses, staff believes that this criteria has not been met. So second criteria is about whether the strict application of the code results in a deprivation of privileges enjoyed by other properties of the same classification in the same zoning district. So the applicant brings up other uses, other retail uses within the center. They bring up pharmacies, bars. Those are regulated. Those are classified differently under our zoning and development code. And so, they do not fall under this tobacco retailer definition. They're not subject to the same restrictions. So we're only looking at privileges enjoyed by same classification, same zoning district. All tobacco retailers in the city are subject to those same use separation requirements in basically every commercial zoning district except for a residential office, where it's prohibited entirely. And this application of the code is uniformly applied and does not deprive them of any specific privileges. They mentioned the nearby American, I think it was the American Legion's site. So that particular use, that business, that operation began before the use separation requirements were in place. So we would consider it an existing non-conforming use. So that's why they are not subject to those use separation requirements. I also put together just a very quick exhibit demonstrating where there are commercially zoned properties that would meet our use separation requirements. So sites that would be potentially eligible to host a tobacco retailer, meaning that from property line to property line, they're more than a quarter mile away. And there are a few in the surrounding areas, the corner of Broadway, and I believe these roads need to be labeled, but the corner of Apache and Rural, for example, features, arterial intersection where that use separation requirement would not be, in place. I recently processed a tobacco retailer establishment at the intersection of Southern and Mill, so just down the road from this site. And I also wanted to point out that this site is also within a quarter mile of 3 total schools. So not only is it within 250 feet of Tempe High School, but it's also within a quarter mile of Broadmoor Elementary and the McKemie Academy of International Studies, which are highlighted a little bit to the south and east of the site. So those are the dots with the red outline. So just wanted to provide that context. The third approval criterion is that the adjustment shall not constitute a grant of special privileges inconsistent with limitations upon other properties in the vicinity and zone in which the property is located. So all properties in this similar zoning district and within the general vicinity are subject to the tobacco retailer use separation requirements. And so it is staff's opinion that approval of this variance would constitute a special privilege. And finally, the applicant made some notes regarding the self-imposition condition on this site. So they refer to a variance case in Phoenix in which the city granted a variance that was subsequently appealed, went back and forth, went to the state Supreme Court. And at that ruling, the court determined that special circumstances are not self-imposed when they result from externally imposed conditions rather than the owner's actions. To clarify, those externally imposed conditions were specific physical characteristics that were created due to actions taken by the city of Phoenix, the external entity on the site, through an eminent domain process. So what the court determined is that if those special circumstances are known to an applicant, they have the right to apply for a variance, and it's not necessarily self-imposed. That doesn't apply to this particular site because those externally imposed physical conditions were not imposed on this site. What they are citing is the existence of the Zoning and Development Code. They're citing the existence of Tempe High School. They're citing, the use separation requirement in general. So a quick timeline of what happened. Tempe High School, built in the 50s. The commercial center, Broadway Plaza, was constructed in the 60s. We adopted the use separation requirements for tobacco retailers. In June 2007, Exhale Society filed for incorporation with the Arizona Commission in October of 2023 and began operating illegally and was cited in February of 2024. So essentially, the site's proximity to the school is the business operator's sole and specific preference, and it is not a result of any externally imposed conditions. The site was not modified by the city. And so staff's opinion is that this criteria is not met. So for public input, the applicant held its neighborhood meeting on August 22nd, 2024 at 2225 East Apache Boulevard. I was in attendance. One resident attended the meeting and was generally supportive of the request. We have received 3 letters of opposition, of which 2 were submitted after the publication of the staff report, so they should be provided to you, and 5 letters of support as of today. Opposition indicated concerns associated with the proximity of the business to Tempe High School and to children in the area and increased access to smoking-related products. And the letters of support stated that the business is a benefit to the overall commercial center, it's a safe space to consume cannabis, and an innovative concept that destigmatizes cannabis consumption. So staff's recommendation, based on its evaluation of the materials provided for the variance request, is for denial. If approved, if the variance is approved, we do have draft conditions of approval that we would request to be applied. I would note that condition number 5, which is related to a use permit for a private club, is struck, would not be adopted as part of any approval because it's not necessary. So that concludes my portion of the presentation. We also have Drew Yokum from Community Enhancement available to provide their perspective on this particular request.
Good evening, Chairman Morrow, members of the board. Thank you for having me this evening. My name is Drew Yokum, and I'm the Deputy Community Enhancement Director here with the City of Tempe. Tonight, we're here to discuss whether it is appropriate to allow a tobacco retailer to reduce their required separation from a school by 81% from 1,320 feet to just a mere 250 feet. The separation of smoking establishments and schools required by the city code was established to protect one of the most vulnerable populations in our society. This evening, I'm going to review the ongoing code compliance case that the Community Enhancement Division has had with Excel Society and the related issues that other divisions across the city are also experiencing at this time. A code compliance case was initiated in the beginning of this year because the City of Tempe received a public complaint about an unpermitted tobacco retailer. It's important to note this complaint came from actually a previous business owner who had tried to open a tobacco retail shop at the same location in the 35 East Broadway Shopping Center, but was told by the city at the time they do not meet separation requirements. After receiving this information, our initial investigation confirmed Excel Society was in fact operating a smoking establishment without proper use permits, and we immediately notified them in February of this year to cease all illegal business activity unless a use permit could be obtained. Over the last 8 months, city staff have tried to educate Excel Society regarding their ongoing violations and how to come into compliance. However, our message has been very clear to both the business owner and property owner that they cannot continue to operate illegally without a proper use permit. 4 separate violation notices identifying the illegal activity were delivered to the owners of the business and their representing attorneys in February, March, May, and June of this year. 4 additional violation notices were also delivered to the property owner, identifying the violations on site in February, March, May, and June of this year. 5 conversations over the phone with community development staff have taken place since February, clearly identifying the illegal business activity to them. And additional conversations over the phone were also held with the city attorney's office, identifying the violations on site. Several email chains have been ongoing, expressing the need to cease illegal operations and acquire appropriate permits with both the business owner and the property owner. Some of those meetings that took place also included with community development directors, the city attorney's office, the deputy director of planning, and the code compliance administrator, again, all detailing the violations taking place on site. And at this time, 2 citations have been issued to the business owner and property owner for illegally operating a tobacco retailer without a use permit. For more than 7 months, despite all the communication and attempts with education, written notices of code violations, issued citations, and requests to cease business activity until an appropriate use permit is obtained, Excel Society continued to host public events on a regular basis, operate illegally without disregard or with disregard of the ongoing violations brought to their attention by the city. As Chris has just shown in his presentation tonight, the City of Tempe supports Excel Society's business type at other locations across the city. This is not the only available location. There are currently 25 other tobacco retailers across the city that are active right now that have all received proper use permits and have gone through the approval process with the City of Tempe. This includes abiding by the separation requirements set forth in the Zoning and Development Code. And some of these retailers include hookah bars, there are 10 of them, 8 smoke shops, 5 vape shops, 1 cigar lounge, and 1 marijuana lounge that does the same operations. The application we're discussing tonight, however, is about the Zoning and Development Code's separation requirement for a tobacco retailer and a smoking establishment at a very specific location in the city, less than 250 feet away from a school. All smoking establishments are considered tobacco retailers, and Excel Society has made it clear that they are a smoking establishment. Excel Society's company bylaws state that the intent of the business is to allow and facilitate smoking inside the building. Throughout the year, they have continued to post advertisements several times a week on their social media for smoking-related events. They state on their website that they are a cannabis smoking consumption lounge, and they have shown videos of people smoking in their lounge and posted smoking images and videos on their website and on their social media page on a regular basis. They have consistently, through conversation with city staff and in meetings, expressed their desire to establish a smoking lounge, where, as they state, every exhale is an invitation to unwind and connect. The city has determined with this information that they are a smoking establishment and by definition a tobacco retailer due to the smoke-emitting substances being used within the business on a regular basis. If Excel Society does, however, want to dispute this determination, they must go through a separate formal process through the code of law that they have mentioned. The separation requirement that we're discussing tonight was adopted into law in 2007 for almost 20 years. And since the adoption of this code compliance has enforced the separation requirement equally without special treatment for all applicable businesses near schools across the city. It is our opinion that there is not enough justification for the current request that would reduce the 1,320-foot separation requirement from a school by more than 1,000 feet from Tempe High School, more than 600 feet from McKimmy Academy, and more than several hundred feet less than the required quarter-mile range from Broadmoor Elementary. All 3 of these schools, again, have been open since the 1950s, nearly 70 years ago. In addition to their failure to acquire a use permit for tobacco retailing, Excel Society also has been found engaging in other activities without the required permits or licenses related to their business use, and numerous divisions across the city have opened independent investigations to address these ongoing violations. A brief overview of some of these violations include from code compliance, not just the tobacco retailer and smoking establishment without a use permit, but also the continual hosting of live entertainment on a regular basis without a use permit. From building safety, unpermitted interior modifications spanning multiple suites without building permits, egress issues during an emergency, concerns with their certificate of occupancy related to the smoking establishment use, unapproved ventilation systems that haven't been reviewed by building safety related to the smoking establishment use. From the Tempe Fire Department, concerns with the fire suppression system related to the smoking establishment use, doors and egress concerns during an emergency related to the business use. From tax and license, we have identified activities requiring approvals or licensing, including bingo and gambling nights without a proper state license, arcade games without appropriate license documentation, and most importantly, Excel Society allows the consumption of liquor on site without an approved liquor license. From the Tempe Police Department, we also have health and safety concerns for the local community related to marijuana and alcohol consumption due to the business's specific location next to schools. In the audience with me tonight, we have representatives from across the city, including the City of Tempe Code Compliance Administrator Jack Schofield, the City of Tempe Building Official Mike Baxley, the City of Tempe's Fire Marshal David Fadebach, Tempe Police Department's Commander Kim Hale, and the City of Tempe Tax and License Manager Josh Bice, available and ready to speak if any of you have questions related to the items I just listed.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. I just want to remind the board that we're here on an application from the applicant for a variance that they've applied for. And so the board should be looking at the 4 criteria under the variance code, and those are the only matters that the board should be considering at this time. So,
thank you, Clarence. To that point, the city at this time has determined Excel Society's business activity is classified as a smoking establishment and a tobacco retailer under the Zoning and Development Code. Tonight, we are discussing if a variance to the separation requirement of a tobacco retailer is appropriate for this location. If Excel Society wants to challenge the tobacco retailer classification, they must go through a separate formal process than this one. Again, the application submitted before us is for a smoking establishment and whether or not an 80% reduction to the separation to the nearest school should be accepted tonight. At this time, I would like to extend an invitation to Commander Kim Hale from the Tempe Police Department to provide a few additional insights from the perspective of law enforcement on how this business can impact the local community.
Commissioner Morrow and board, I appreciate the opportunity to come before you and speak. As you know, we're talking about Tempe High School. Primarily, we have school resource officers there, and we deal with the students on a regular basis. Also in that plaza, it's been mentioned that there is a large bar that's in that same plaza that's shared. That bar itself, we have a lot of concerns because we've been working with the owners and the managers of the bar reference fake IDs, and we always have some underage youth that are in there, and we've taken quite a bit of enforcement with them, and we continue to work through a security plan with that bar. And so we know that that plaza has frequent use of underage folks that yet use fake IDs to get into the bar, could easily also get into the Excel Society Club. One of the things that they talked about is an invitation only, referral only club, private club. I can tell you that we have used some undercover officers to check out the club to find out exactly how are they operating. There was no invitation, there was no referral. It was $20 to get in. They just charge you money. They go in and they were taking a look at the club to see how they operated. Well, inside the club, they noticed that there was vendors that were there, not necessarily selling, but dispensing samples of marijuana, giving bong hits off the bong of marijuana. Nobody's checking to find out how much people are dispensing or sharing and those kind of things. And so the detectives themselves, they said that they don't allow tobacco smoke inside the club, but the detectives, to try to fit in, had tobacco product with them so that they could smoke something and fit into the club. And so there's no checking about what people are smoking or what they're doing inside the club once they're in. People can bring their own alcohol and drink alcohol in the club. So, those are some concerns that we have as far as how it's being managed and what's going on inside the club. So there are those issues that we think that all need to be addressed, but primarily the concern that we have is the proximity to youth and the proximity to the schools. I went through and checked out a lot of their advertisement that Drew Yokum spoke of and looked at, what kind of activities they're doing there, who's dispensing, what products they're dispensing. Anywhere from concentrates to flour to, all a variety of different products. So I called the Department of Health Services. As you know, marijuana is a highly regulated product. And I said, how can these people be doing this? Because it's, in order to transport marijuana, you have to have trip plans. In order to dispense, there's only certain locations you can dispense at. When you dispense, all the people have to, copy down how much they're dispensing and who they're dispensing to make sure that the person's not purchasing more than they're allowed to purchase in any given day or they have, it's all regulated. None of that's being done inside the club. Like I said, they're dispensing, they're allowing people to take, nobody's copying it down. And they said that they checked on some of the people that are dispensing there, and I gave them the names that are here inside their brochures and their advertisements. Many are related to licensed establishments. And they're saying that's a concern with them because legally, they don't know how they're trying to get around that as licensed manufacturers and dispensaries. And so in order to conduct a business under the business model they're using, according to DHS, they can't do it legally the way that they're apparently doing it. And so those companies shouldn't be dispensing there in bottom line. So those are concerns, is operating outside of the marijuana laws themselves. So, but I will go back to our largest concern, regardless of their business model, regardless of how they're doing it. It's really comes back to the youth and their access, potential access and proximity to the high school, primarily for us, because that's where those kids with fake IDs can come over and potentially get access to some of the marijuana that's being dispensed from that club. So those are a myriad of concerns that we have. And I just wanted to make sure that we clarify kind of how they're doing business and what that looks like for the city of Tempe.
Thank you. Do I have comments from any other staff? Everybody bailed on us. Well, I have a question for somebody from staff, whoever wants to take it, about this court judgment that may or may not have taken place earlier this.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
again, the items related to that court judgment are not sort of before the board tonight. We're only looking at the 4 items under the variance, section 6-309. And so, you know, if the applicant or if the city wants to deal with that court order, there's a different
Avenue for it?
Avenue jurisdiction that they can do that. So the board should confine its decision and its deliberations to those 4 criteria under the variance code.
Okay.
They're allowed to go up there and say. Okay.
Chris, anything else from you?
No, I was just up here ready to answer any questions if you had any.
Yes, we'll have some. Kaylee's first.
Sure. Thank you, Chris. So I'm trying to understand some context and history here. So did the applicant ever request a formal interpretation? Did they ever request from staff in writing a formal use interpretation?
Chair, Board Member Palmer, no.
And then, okay, thank you.
And to that point, we have a provision of zoning administrator's interpretation. It's a formal process to get a use definition, use classification, determination with a city letterhead. We do not have any such application processed related to this site.
Great. Oh.
I do need to clarify because Chris Jasper was involved in the earlier conversations with the business regarding the direction provided by the applicant. We did meet with attorney representatives. They explained their opinion and classification of the business. We provided our information and explanation to them as to what category the business falls under. That was provided to them. There is no basis for them to apply for interpretation on it because it fell under both city code and zoning code. They met with our attorney's office on the matter to discuss that, but it was provided in some clarification with attorneys regarding the matter for the use category.
Great, thank you. And I assume, is this after they opened and received violations?
During the process of receiving notice for violations.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just 2 questions. Is there a certificate of occupancy been issued yet for this site?
Chair, Board Member Kege, I believe Drew mentioned that there were certificate of occupancy issues. I'll defer to our building safety building official, Mike Baxley.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, there is not an active certificate of occupancy on this property. The use that they are using right now is not what was set up in the original certificate of occupancy that was there.
Thank you. And just one other question. This is for which other staff. This is basically a land use question. Is it possible for a land use to be both in a smoking establishment and a private club?
Board Member Kege, the short answer is yes. We have a similar use. It's called High Maintenance, located on Mill Avenue downtown, that operates both as a tobacco retailer and as a private club to engage in similar activities to what is proposed by Exhale Society.
Any other questions? Do we have any questions from our 2 virtual board members?
No questions, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you.
No questions from Mary.
Okay. We have, thank you, Chris. We have 3 public comment cards from members of the audience. We'll start with Avery Havendine. We'll have to forgive my pronunciation, and we'll give you about 3 minutes. Please, thank you.
Hello there. My name's Avery Herendine. I'm a undergraduate student at ASU and also a member of the Tempe Coalition, a team who strives to prevent use of and risk of underage drinking and drug use in our community. So thank you for providing this opportunity for me to explain to you why this variance should not be approved, because it puts our Tempe youth and young adults in harm's way. Research says that marijuana is related to mild cognitive impairments, depression, anxiety, and linked to later occurring psychotic disorders, which has a direct correlation to the mental health crisis that we're in our community right now. It is reported that the psychoactive potency of cannabis is on the rise, with an average THC weight growing from 3% to 15% today. Research from the National Health Institute shows that adults under the age of 25 are 3.5 times more likely to attempt suicide when regularly using marijuana. When we take this back to our Tempe community, it is extremely problematic considering the location and proximity to the school. Considering our students, a primary concern of creating this, allowing this establishment to be there is creating an environment of normalcy and acceptance of marijuana use in front of our teens. According to the Arizona Youth Survey that we put out every year, 75% of our Tempe youth see little to no harm in using marijuana, especially when they're overly exposed to it. And 50% of those report regular use of marijuana already in our Tempe youth. Approval of this variance increases temptation and or chances of use. Research tells us that our human brain does not fully develop until 25 years of age, far from our youth and adolescents. It is troublesome to allow this kind of establishment to be this close to our high-risk community of youth and to ignore the harmful effects that substance has on our developing brain. Accepting this variance will only promote unhealthy behaviors and to an already high-risk and a vulnerable population. It is also said by research that 45% of marijuana users progress to other drug means to gain relief. I have personal experience of this from friends that were exposed to this in high school, whose first substance of use was cannabis in a social setting, but then soon turned into self-isolation and self-medication for those disorders regarding mental health. In conclusion, I do not believe that this should be accepted, and approval of this location for this business will have a direct negative impact on our Tempe youth and young adults. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Bryson Zolnik.
Hello, Tempe City Council. This is my first ever council meeting and first time speaking up and getting involved. I'm going to be honest, I didn't plan to come up and say anything. I just wanted to come support my friends who I've known for many, many years now. And I think just with some things that have been said, I wanted to give my input to give some background to you. I moved to Arizona, to Tempe. I now live in Mesa back in 2018, and I've been DJing professionally in the Valley ever since then, doing private events ranging from 20 people up to public events containing 1,500 to 2,000 people. I've done clubs, I've done private events, I've done weddings. And I've also DJ'd for Exhale many, many times. And just what I want to say in that regard is a lot of the concerns that the city has is their proximity to the youth and how they're letting people in. I've never seen an establishment take it so serious to where they really, really do truly vet everyone and make sure that they're 21 plus to get in. As an example, one day when I got there to DJ, I had 2 friends with me, and I was just gonna bring them in the back with me to, and just kind of have them walk through and go to the front door to check in there. And the moment they saw that, they said, "Nuh-uh, they gotta go around, you gotta do this proper, you gotta do it right." I think it's worth mentioning that they're not just out there trying to get every single person in, and that they're taking it very, very serious to make sure that these legal requirements of being 21 plus and verifying that have been met. Furthermore, I think just kind of as a general thing that I've noticed is it seems like there's a lot of concern over the proximity to the school, and this whole smoking establishment is kind of what the city is using to do. I appreciated your question earlier, Kevin, about when that law was written. When I look at Tempe, especially when I came here to go to ASU, I saw the #1 in innovation. And I know that sounds cheesy. I always thought it was cheesy too. But I think what we have here is a really good opportunity to find out how to navigate this. And I want you guys to know, and I also want the people of the city to know that these are the right people to figure out this out with. That the folks at Exhale take this seriously. They've done their due diligence, and I've witnessed it since they've opened their business. And I stand by them, and they are the right people to figure out how to start navigating this sort of thing. And I just want to express that they are the right people and that their character is good and they're not taking advantage of the situation. Thank you.
Thank you. And last, we'll hear from, is that no, Olin Rice? Colin Rice? Should have gone to med school.
I did. Well, I went to nursing school. My name's Colin Rice. Thank you. First, I just want to thank everybody from the Excel Society. As somebody who went there regularly and as somebody who has, for better or worse, smoked cannabis since he was 15 years old, I just want to say that what they've done for Tempe and people like me is extraordinary. And I want to thank them for all their hard work. As a private citizen of Phoenix, I would say that the city does seem as if they are being disingenuous, not necessarily the council, but the staff. I have been here going through this whole Exhale Society debacle since day one. I've been a long time member at their private members club. Without going into too much detail, it is a safe place. There is multiple layers of security to deter youth cannabis use. Youth cannabis use is on the rise, and I feel that in order to actually do something about that and properly educate people, there has to be a solution. And trying to force Exhale Society to accept that they need a use permit that, again, I believe the city is being disingenuous, sending in undercover police officers and sting operations to essentially break the rules that they were asked not to participate in while entering in and signing a document to be in an establishment like that. It's not necessarily entrapment, but it smells funny. I don't really have much else to say other than thank you to my friends and family from Excel Society. I hope you guys really think about this and think about people like me. Again, don't think that the high school is a situation. Again, CVS, Foreign Legion, we should definitely try to make sure that this is legislated properly. We get answers to these questions, but trying to retro mod them into something that doesn't make sense, again, doesn't make sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Then we'll have Edward Campos. I'm getting better.
All right, so I don't really know what to say. I did want to say some things, though. I'm kind of all over the place when I talk all the time. But, so Exhale Society is a good place. You might want to, like, some things to think about. Yeah, I know the zoning is across the street from the school. And so I'm thinking about all these questions when you guys are reading this stuff, but I'm like, the tobacco and all that stuff. I just don't know how it was so easy for the bar to get there. But, you know, whatever, it's there. Looks like it's doing good business. Yeah, so I'm a patient. I have my medical card. I have a patient card, and that's a good place for to go. It's a safe place to smoke. It's not just a place to get wasted. You don't see wasted going on there. You see social engagement. healthy, stimulating activity that a lot of other adults don't get elsewhere, especially with the taboo of using marijuana in other places. And another thing to consider is like, there's no laws against what they've done, right? So I don't know what you guys look at it bad as a loophole or something, but you might want to remember, especially here in court, that the laws were never created because to like point out who's right and who's doing a good job. The laws were created to point out that we're doing a bad job, to keep us from doing bad stuff. That's what the laws, that's why they were made. So when there's somebody that has something that's going on and it's like not even close to the law, I don't understand how it's defined as a bad thing. That's what I got. All right, thank you for hearing me. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Seeing none. Questions from the board for the applicant or for city staff? Sorry, am I forgetting a step? I'm probably forgetting a step.
The applicant has the opportunity to come up and respond to any public comments. That were
Yes. I knew I was missing a step.
All right, sorry, there's a lot of emotion. This has been a roller coaster for me and my family and employees, but we, as far as zoning interpretation, we did ask for that and we're told it was very clear. We're a tobacco retailer. That was the reply. As far as the certificate of occupancy, we're going through the process to get that. The suite we were unaware was split before we took it over. We're going through the process to get that handled and make it right. We are 21 plus. If you're concerned about younger people consuming cannabis, the other lounge that you guys gave an intensified tobacco permit to, which is not in any city code or law anywhere, is actually 18 plus with medical card. So that might be something you guys should look into if you're concerned about youth using tobacco or cannabis. And then nobody has been in our club without signing a membership agreement and an invitation. It is required. We see the ID and scan it into our computer system. If they did a sting operation, they signed it. They got an invitation and they signed a membership agreement. There's no question about that. And then another question, they said the American Legion was there before, so they didn't need a variance. Wouldn't they still need a use permit for being a tobacco retailer to allow people to smoke tobacco inside? That wouldn't be pre-existing to a variance, as far as I'm aware. And then under the tobacco retailers, there is no cannabis consumption or mention of cannabis anywhere in there, and it was written before cannabis was even legalized. So that's something I think you guys should take into consideration. And then the judge did rule we are not a tobacco retailer. They ruled we're a private members club. So them saying that we have open citations with use permits is 100% false. The judge already made a ruling. I uploaded it, sent it to the city. And cannabis was never mentioned anywhere in the tobacco retailer's license. And we are a cannabis club. We're not a smoking lounge. People can drink cannabis, you can eat cannabis. There's a lot of topicals, suppositories. There's a lot of different ways to consume cannabis. So for them to send us a letter in February saying stop all cannabis consumption, there's no laws against it. That's the problem we have. Because we're by a high school, I understand they don't like that, but they're making up laws. So that's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Now, do we have any final questions or discussion? We've got a lot of info. Oh, staff gets another, okay. For those watching, this is my first meeting as chair, so I'll do better next time.
Chair.
Welcome back, Chris.
Yeah, so just wanted to kind of respond to a few things that came up in the discussion earlier. So with respect to the American Legion's use permit. So my understanding is there is a use permit in place that has been transferred to the existing operator at that site. And I think I just wanted to kind of put a final, make a final statement regarding, what the intent of the variance process is and what the board's purview is with respect to this particular request. So, it is the applicant's responsibility to demonstrate that it meets and that it definitively meets all four, of the four-part components of the variance test. Based on the information that they've provided, staff's opinion is that they have not sufficiently demonstrated compliance with any of them, and certainly not with all four. The land use question is not in the, is not an item that is to be determined by the Board of Adjustment through the variance process. That is a separate, process. What we're looking at are the objective technical requirements for this site, for a tobacco retailer with respect to the site itself, its proximity to the school, and all of those components of that four-part test. So I just want to, close by stating that, based on the information provided, both in the applicant's materials and in their presentations and in their responses, staff does not believe they've met those components. So I think that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Kiki. Oh, no.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate all the information that we've heard here tonight regarding both the pros and cons of marijuana use, as well as how the establishment operates and the steps that they take to try to contain the use there. But the fact remains that this establishment is in fact classified by the city as a smoking establishment, and therefore is subject to the separation requirements that zoning ordinance imposes. So in my opinion, none of the variance criteria have been met, and therefore I will not be supporting this request, and I'm happy to make a motion at the chair's pleasure. Thank you.
Before you make the motion, I'm going to just note, I don't know that it matters to us whether or not they are a tobacco retailer. The question is a variance for tobacco retailers. So if they're not a tobacco retailer, the variance question becomes somewhat irrelevant.
I'm not sure I see it that way. Because
our question is, do we vote yes, no on the variance?
Right, I was just giving background as to why I believe the variance is in place and the fact that the variance criteria has not been met. So,
I think the variance criteria has not been met.
Okay, I understand.
But I'm just saying, as part of us making that analysis, the whether or not they are a tobacco retailer is not, I think, part of our calculus. It's just the four special circumstances of the property, strict application of the zoning code, special privilege. That question is someone else's department. Anyways, sorry. And you were going to make a motion?
All right, I move to deny the request for a variance to reduce the use separation requirement between a tobacco retailer and a public school from 1,320 feet to 250 feet for Exhale Society Incorporated located at 35 East Broadway Road.
I second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying hands or saying aye if you're on virtually.
Aye.
What are our virtual votes?
Aye.
You have two online.
I have two online ayes. All right, so by a vote of 7-0, the motion to, can you repeat, the motion to deny the variance request is passed. The variance request is denied. Item number 3, chair, staff updates and announcements.
Yes, Chair Morrow, Vice Chair Palmer, board members, we do have one item for the agenda for the month of November. That meeting is on Wednesday, November 20th. And those are the only announcements for this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Yes.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it.